Hi, I'm Bill Merklein. We're in the early part of April 2011, and the Gregory James Gallery in New Milford, Connecticut is hosting a show from the renowned realist, landscape artist, Thomas Adkins. Tom, really great to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Let us, Tom, you were telling me when we had our phone interviews that the artists that you admire range a tremendous amount of history. We begin with Vermeer, go through Winslow Homer, the French and the American Impressionists, right up to the contemporary artist Peter Poskus.
Right.
Can you elaborate a bit on that? I mean, when did you start? When did you get engaged?
Sure. When I was in college, I had a professor who kind of started me off on studying Winslow Homer. And I took a series of Winslow's paintings, and maybe a dozen or two, and I did very tight, detailed pencil sketches of those. And by doing that, I learned a lot about the composition, the values, the contrast, his design, what the structure of the painting was underneath. So I studied his work for a number of years. Then I kind of moved on at the same time, studied Vermeer. Vermeer I liked very much because he used the golden means, he used shapes, perspectives, and the detail. And he used the camera when it first came on. And so that detail that he incorporated into his work, I really liked and studied.
Right. The golden mean, by the way, is a reference to composition, the mathematics of composition. Right. Okay.
And then right after graduation, I'd say, or towards my senior year, I had spent some time over in France. I spent 3-4 weeks in France, and I saw a lot of the Impressionist work, French Impressionists, Monet, Manet, and those guys. And what I appreciated in their work was the use of broken color and lighting. That's what something totally kind of new to me. So seeing that work inspired the French Impressionists. Coming back, I learned a lot about the American Impressionists, like Willard Metcalf, right, who does a lot of on-location painting, and again, played off of his lighting principles. So it's kind of a combination of all those artists that I try to bring to my work. So I wouldn't say my work is any one genre, it's realism, but I kind of try to pick up a little bit from all the artists of the past and incorporate them into my work.
Oh, that's wonderful. You started quite young, as I recall.
Right.
So when you were in Paris, you were a college student?
Yeah, I was a college student,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. So when did you get the bug? How did it start with you?
I would say it's probably 5-6 years old.
Yeah.
And you know, I used to draw at home on the kitchen table. And then in second grade, we had an assignment to do a portrait of our parents. So I did a portrait of my father, and I won first place. I won a birdhouse or a keychain, something like that, small. But from that point on, all through grammar school, I was in charge of doing all the bulletin boards and all the artwork required for the school. So I said, hey, you know, I could probably make a career out of this thing. I enjoy doing it. People like it. I get straight A's in those classes as opposed to the other subjects. So when I got to high school, I majored in art.
Right.
And in my senior year, they had a local competition among all the high schools for a scholarship in painting. So I submitted a landscape painting. I took first place. And I got a $600 scholarship, which was a lot of money back then.
Right.
And that helped to start my education in college. And then in college, I went to Pear College of Art in New Haven. And that was a 4-year program. And I studied graphic design and illustration. And I took night classes doing portrait painting. I used to do a lot of that portrait work back then. And then upon graduation from Pear, I took courses at the School of Visual Arts in New York.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's
East 24th Street.
Yeah, a couple classes back then. So it was a good, solid foundation. And what Pear brought about, the dean of the school back then was Ken Davies. It was a strong fundamental drawing, composition, classical training, as opposed to abstract, which was pretty popular back in the 70s.
Right.
So that, you know, I had that strong foundation of drawing.
It's very true. What you just hit on was the problem of becoming a representational painter in a time when most instructors were teaching abstraction. How did you overcome that? Or did you have to overcome that? Did you have teachers who were qualified in the representational field? Probably the School of Visual Arts.
Yeah, well, they were all pretty much, at least at Pear, they were all classically trained. A lot of the teachers I had either went to Yale or taught at Yale and at Pear. So they all were very strong in realism. And I had a love for it. I thought a good painting, by visiting museums, really were strong in all those different elements.
Yeah.
I wasn't really in tune to abstraction at that point either. It wasn't taught, it wasn't explained to me. I can appreciate it more today than I did back then. But back then, realism was what was taught.
That's fabulous. You were very lucky. And when I was doing it, it was a struggle.
Really?
But I'm a few years older than you.
Yeah.
Tom, why do we do this? Why do you do this?
Well, there are so many reasons. There's plenty of reasons. I'd say probably one of the primary ones is I like to share my experiences with other people. Things that I see in nature when I'm driving around, they really have an impact on me. And I want to share those with other people. And the fact that the paintings sell, I mean, that brings great joy to me because someone is seeing the same thing that I'm seeing, or I'm bringing it to them in a new, fresh kind of way. So sharing the experience is very key for me. I love the creative challenge. It's not easy. I mean, it's pretty intimidating to step in front of a 30 by 40 white canvas and know you got to create something of beauty on it or capture that. It's not an easy thing done. So I love the whole creative process. Another aspect is I'd like to think I'm going to leave something on this earth when I leave of value.
Footprint.
A footprint.
Yeah.
In a museum, hopefully somewhere that people are going to enjoy. So I think that's a main driver, another reason why I do it. I'd say another aspect would be if I don't do it, I'm miserable. And I can't explain why that is, but if I'm not painting for 2 or 3 weeks, it's like a release of some form. It's something I have to do. And I get great enjoyment out of it.
This exhibition at the Gregory James Gallery is an exhibition primarily of landscapes. Is that your favorite genre?
Yeah, landscapes. And some, I guess you can call them marinescapes. I call them like farmscapes and marinescapes.
When you go out and you are eyeballing the landscape, is there something that catches your eye? Do you know what it is? Is it, is it shape? Is it light, shadow formations? Is it the feeling of the day?
It's a combination of a variety of things. I usually prefer going out early morning as the sun's rising, the first 2 or 3 hours, or the last 3 hours of the day, when the lighting is very diagonal, it's very strong.
Right, long shadows.
It really forms the shapes. You can see the shapes of things. So when I'm driving around, and my wife will tell you this, and my son, is that they think I'm going to kill him in the car because I'm always out looking for subject matter. I'm always looking for the lighting. So I'm looking for that special moment. There's a spark usually when I see it. It's something that just hits me right away.
Right.
And again, it's either the lighting, it might be the pattern of things, the way the light hits them. It may be color complements. Maybe it's the yellow of flowers against the purple of a mountain. So it could be a variety of design things. I guess I'm looking for the design in nature. And it varies. I can drive by the same location a dozen times and not see anything.
Right.
But on that 13th time, I see something that's special and I try to capture it.
Isn't that amazing how that happens, that we can go by things all the time and just see them as absolutely banal subjects, and then one day the light hits it a certain way, the whole thing changes for us, and suddenly we see something we had not seen before.
And that's what you're trying to share with people, because
Right.
I'm convinced that every human walks the earth, when they have those special moments.
Absolutely.
And whether it's looking at a landscape or looking at their child or looking at a cityscape, there's that moment of something that just brings wonder to them. So I'm trying to capture those little wonders and share them with people.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a shared human experience. We don't do this for our pets. We do this for our fellow human beings.
Right.
When you're in the field, many of your paintings are large and technically very involved. Do you do an in-the-field sketch and do a studio painting? Do you do it both ways? Do you do paintings completed in the field, or do you bring things back and work on them?
Almost every larger piece is done as a smaller version on location. So I either paint in the field, set up my easel outside and do a painting from say 10 by 10, 11:14 in size, or I sit in my truck in the colder weather, turn the classical music on, have a coffee, I put my palette on the seat, and I'll do 10 by 10 study. Pretty detailed. I get about 80 to 90% of it completed on location, and along with some photography, some digital photos that I use as reference. But all the paintings, whether it's small or large, start out with a series of thumbnails, sketches.
Right.
The 2 by 2, 3 by 3 pencil sketches. I may do 3 or 4 to kind of work out the composition, what it is that I like about it. I got to make sure that I'm kind of portraying that thought that I initially saw. Mm-hmm. So I work all that out in a pencil form, and then do the location sketch. And then coming back to the studio, I'll take that sketch along with the small oil painting, and I'll do a detailed drawing on a large white canvas. Fairly detailed. Sometimes I even go overboard and start rendering it, just so I get familiar with that shape or that form. And then I'll give it a coating of an earth tone. It seals in the charcoal. Right. And it gives me a tone to work from. I can better see my values. If it has a toned background, like a burnt sienna, it's like a middle value. So when I put my lights and I put my darks, I can read the values better. Right. So, and then from there I build my color.
Do you tone the entire canvas, even the sky?
The entire canvas is toned. And usually you have one tone on the base, and then I'll work through the whole painting, usually from the sky down, or from things that are in perspective, from something forward to backwards. And then I'll lay colors sometimes on top of that. I'll lay cools on top of warms and warm colors. It kind of gives a vibration. It gives that sense of depth.
Absolutely. This is something that's missing in a lot of people's work, is the subtle undertone, the thing that is not seen but it is felt.
Exactly. I mean, that's more like graphic. If you're just going to put flat, straight color down, you're not getting that vibration. So, tones can lay on top of one another and read through. The reds that I put on the base sometimes read through and give that vibration.
Exactly.
I'll work with gradations from light to dark in a variety of shapes. It gives movement. So, I kind of try building the painting so there's movement within the painting.
As I look at your work, and we'll be showing you the work shortly, they have a commonality of a serenity that runs through the work. And the great curiosity, also as a painter, is this who we are or who we would like to be? Do you recognize that serenity, that sense of peace in your work?
Maybe that's what I'm longing for. And I don't see it that way, but I guess I don't include figures very often in my work. So I think it's that serenity when I'm there that comes through into my work.
A sense of solitude also?
Solitude, yeah. Satisfaction, gratitude, well-being, I think.
Fabulous. Cut. Well, let's have a look at some of your artwork and talk about it. Right next to you, right behind you, is an area I recognize. That's the Hip Farm, which is on the north side of New Milford. Now, where you live in?
I live in Southbury.
In Southbury.
I moved to Southbury about, I'd say 20 years ago, but growing up, I grew up in Waterbury, but I spent all my time I could out in Southbury, Woodbury, in the farm area. So that's what really attracted me to this area. And the reason I paint this area is because, again, there's a lot of form to the landscape. There's local farms, there's rolling hills, there's mountains, there's valleys, and the lighting is very, I guess, more interesting than you'd find in a flat area. And the farms in this area, they're dwindling as time goes on, but there's still, in the Watertown, Woodbury, New Milford, Washington, there are still some working farms, and that's what I kind of gravitate to. I think from my upbringing, I used to love to spend time on farms.
So you grew up on a farm?
No, but I had family that lived near farms. So when we'd go up to Torrington and the different locations, I'd always spend the time playing in farms.
Were you born in Connecticut?
I was born in San Antonio, Texas, and my father was in the Air Force. We moved into Connecticut, I was about 4 or 5, and we lived in Terryville, which is a very small community, and there were farms all around. So I spent all my youth playing on these farms, but then the government came in, they had to put a dam in, and those 6 or 7 families that lived in that valley in Terryville had to leave, and that's when we moved to Waterbury. But I guess my earliest memories have always been outdoors playing in farms, and so there's some kind of attachment there.
Wow, okay.
To me.
The hip farm is right, again, it's right behind you, and this is an oil painting. Is oil your medium of choice? Have you tried other mediums?
Yes, I paint oil on linen, on Belgium linen.
Have you tried other mediums?
Yeah, I've tried acrylic. I don't like how quick it dries. Oils are much more flexible. You can maneuver them. They take a little while to dry. You can build up on them. You can make them either translucent or opaque, whatever your preference. You can add texture to it. You can thin them out. So it has a lot of flexibility. So I prefer working in oils, and that's what this is here.
Let's talk a little bit about why you chose this particular scene. What caught your attention about it?
Well, this is a fall scene, and it was like, I guess I'd describe it like a smoky fall day when there was a lot of moisture in the air. So I like the feeling of depth that it has. And from a design standpoint, I kind of like the patterns of things, and people might not see this, but there's a pattern going on here of elements. And the elements is based on pairs, things of twos. And you know, I have 2 trees, I have 2 houses, I've got 2 trees here, I've got these 2 barns, I've got the 2 cows. And you know, I guess the average person looking at this wouldn't realize that, but there's a pattern built into this thing that adds interest to the painting. And you know, I like the fact that it was a fall day and the lighting was coming from the side, and it cast long shadows on the front of the landscape. And I've been working more and more in a square format. I don't know why, it's just something, it's not as common as a rectangle or a typical 11-14 proportion. The square I seem to like.
That's true. For painters, there are only a very limited number of formats of different sizes, and after a while it gets tedious and you try to find different things, which is wonderful for the Gregory James Gallery, because they also do frames, and that means custom framing.
Right. Yeah, these aren't the standard sizes, and it seems the square seems to have more structure to it. To me, it's more confining. It holds things in. And I you know, famous painters in the past like Willard Metcalf, the American Impressionist, almost all his paintings were square. That was his preference. Yeah. And I just find it a little more challenging, a little more interesting visually to look at.
Willard Metcalf also painted up in Litchfield County. He painted very much in this area.
He did.
It was very different, wasn't it, back then?
Oh, it was, you know, back at that time, 90% of the terrain was treeless with all the farms. Now it's all kind of growing back in.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's have a look at another painting. All right. Well, we've switched paintings, and tell us a little bit about this piece.
Yeah, this painting is the Stiles Farm in Woodbury, Connecticut. It's been there for hundreds of years. And what caught my interest here was I kind of built on the structure of this painting. And earlier when I was talking about the golden means, I was talking about the geometric shapes within a painting. And this one is kind of built on square. It's a square formatted painting. And if you kind of cut a diagonal in here, there's a square built into this. There's a square built into this. So structurally, it's like shapes within shapes that repeat themselves that I think creates interest. Along with, also I was talking about complements. I love the complements here of the forsythias with the purplish blue woods in the back. So you're playing off of complements. You got squares within shapes. The reflective lighting that's coming in, just kind of, this area is in shadow, but it picks up nice reflected light and creates additional interest. So again, there's a lot of structural things beneath the painting, I think, that add strength to it.
Very good. Tom, where are we in this painting?
Yeah, this painting here is on Mohegan Island in Maine. And I started painting up in Maine, I'd say about 7 or 8 years ago. I made a trip up there with my son and did a few pencil sketches and really got intrigued with the area. And as a child, that's where we used to vacation with my parents. We used to always go up to the Maine coast. So, and I had family living in Rockland, Maine, which is not too far from this location. So about 5 years ago, my wife and I were interested in possibly buying a small home up in Maine. And we drove up and down the entire coast of Maine looking for something. And as you know, or you may not know, Maine is just a bunch of peninsulas. So there's hundreds, if not thousands of miles of coastline. So we drove up and down looking for a place to, again, get a small place. And we settled on a place called Round Pond, which is a very small fishing village in mid-coast Maine, about halfway up the coast of Maine. And we put some money down on some property, and I later called my dad and said, you know, I'm interested in getting a little place in Round Pond, Maine. Little did I know, my father spent his vacations as a child in Round Pond, Maine, and my uncle, not knowing this, owned a piece of property that I was about ready to purchase.
Wow.
And it was an amazing coincidence out of thousands of miles of property, of shoreline. I happened to settle in that same community. So I've been going up there in about 5 or 6 years. And this is located on a little island off the coast of Maine called Mohegan Island, where artists have been painting for over 100 years. The Wyeths painted here. Rockwell Kent paints here. Don Stone currently lives there. So it's a very popular destination.
Well, this was also the home for Winslow Homer. He had a studio there. And do you feel the spirit? Are you haunted by Winslow Homer?
Well, Winslow Homer was south of here,
right,
south of Maine. But again, there's just a natural attraction, the rugged beautiness of it that I really like. So again, this is Mohegan, Maine, and this is the harbor leading onto the island. The island is about 10, 12 miles off the coast of Maine. It's, I think, 3 or 4 miles long, maybe a mile wide, and it's really unchanged. They have no paved roads. They have electricity. There may be 50 residents that live on the island full time, and it may swell to 100, couple hundred in the summer. But again, it's extremely picturesque. This is looking into the harbor. It's backlit, which I really liked, and the light's coming from the southwest, and it casts nice strong shadows and makes these elements pop from the painting. And again, we have the pattern of the boats, and it's a bright, cheerful mid-afternoon day.
And you were following the golden mean once again?
Again, as you can see it, you can see the square shape. I'm cropping off elements. It gives a bit of an expanse feeling to it. But again, it's the square within the square.
Lovely. Tom, this looks like another Maine subject. Can you elaborate?
Yes, this painting is painted right down the street from where I have my home. It's in Muscogee Bay. It's again in mid-coast, and this is in a little small there's a little small fishing village where lobstermen have their boats and their homes, and this is like at the break of dawn. Just as dawn is lifting, there's still a little mist on the water. That's why you'll find the island off in the back is kind of soft and muted. It is in late May, early June when the lupins come out, and the lupins are very prominent up in Maine. They love the moisture, and they're in front of this shed here. And again, it's you know, patterns. I have patterns of lupins and patterns of the lobster buoys, and the patterns here again repeated, and the patterns of the seagulls. So again, we're playing off of patterns. Again, I like dissecting the architecture to kind of frame the painting. We have singular elements. I've got a single window and a single boat, and that's it.
You have a touch of light on the lobster shack. Was it an overcast day and you just get a little breaks of light?
That's like reflected light. There may be another building on the other side. It bounces off and kind of reflects onto that building.
Tom, at least our viewers think that you only do large works. Here are some lovely examples of some plein air paintings and also smaller studies. So the one that we're looking at right now, is this an alla prima?
Yeah, all 3 of these paintings here that you see were done on location. We have one 10 by 10 and 2 11 by 14 paintings. Again, they're done on location. The entire painting was done in my truck in this case, in this particular case. A winter scene, very dramatic lighting at the end of the day.
How long did it take you to do this when you're painting alla prima?
I'd say this is about a 4 to 5 hour painting.
4 to 5 hours. So your lighting
hours.
changes very dramatically in that period of time. So you try to get the essential lighting done very
Exactly.
quickly?
I get the essential lighting within the first hour, hour and a half.
Right.
And then it's memory that I have to rely on to complete it.
That's a lovely piece. What is the size of that painting?
That is 11 by 14.
11 by 14.
11 by 14.
Let's have a look at another one. Tom, before we talk about this painting, your last painting, where was that done?
Yeah, that was in Woodbury, Connecticut, a location called Logue's Farm in Woodbury, Connecticut.
Wonderful. And let's have a look at this painting.
Yeah, this painting
how big a painting is this?
This is a 10 by 10 painting, also painted on location.
Very detailed.
And it's at the Tanner Farm in Warren, Connecticut. Again, painted in my truck, alla prima. Again, 10 by 10. It's a spring scene. You can see just a hint of foliage starting to appear. It's misty, overcast. There's no strong lighting. It's very soft and muted.
Do you have favorite times of the year?
I'd say, yeah, I probably do. I probably prefer fall, spring, and winter, and not summer. It seems that the summer greens just, they're just dominant over everything.
They're huge, aren't they?
Absolutely. Believe it or not, there's more color in winter for me than you'll find in summer.
This landscape is extremely dramatic. I love those very dark shadows on the distant hills. Is that the purpose of this painting? Was that what drew you to?
Exactly. This is painted in Oxford, Connecticut. It's a farm off of 188, and it's towards the end of the day, right after a storm, and there's deep, like threatening clouds, but there's rays of light from the west that just kind of filter in. So it's, again, very dramatic. A lot of contrast between the hills and the farm.
And again, the size, 11-14?
Yeah, this is 11 by 14.
Tom, you brought this in. This is a fresh painting. Is it dry?
Right. I just varnished it the other day. This is a painting I just finished this winter. Winter being one of my favorite times of year to paint. This is the McGoldrick's farm in Warren, not in Warren. It's in Sherman, Connecticut, and the winter of 2010-2011 was filled with a lot of storms, which I really loved. And this was painted in January of 2011. And as you can see, there's snow drifts all over. The lighting was dramatic. This is after the storm. And it's a large painting. It's 36 by 48.
It's a beautiful painting. This is a farm that I know very well. I live very close to it, and the people who own it are just marvelous human beings. It's a lovely job. I know the hill you're looking down on, and the road there, that's Church Road, and that will eventually lead you over to Route 7.
Or maybe they'll get a chance to come in and take a look at the painting.
Yes, wouldn't that be neat? They would have
nice,
really
yeah.
enjoyed that. They're big fans. Well, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to come down here and shoot this video for us. And so this is going to be a lovely painting to end the talk with.
Well, I've been showing now with Greg here at Gregory James Gallery for 4 or 5 years now, and he does a great job in displaying my work, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Very welcome, and thank you.
You're welcome.